by alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon by taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Friend from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
Heidi-ho, soccer neighbors. This is the People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City SC. I am your host, Nate, joined as always by the Lenny to my Carl, Minneapolis City Sporting Director John Bisworm. John, what is up, dude? Are we just another day in paradise? Am I right?
I really am appreciating your Simpsons references.
That was a good one.
In the intro. I wish you would have added a diddly ho in there. But
yeah, I could have kept it going.
Yeah, you definitely could have.
Oh.
But I'm good, man. Thank you so much for asking. I'm in a happy place as far as soccer is concerned, because with all the craziness that came out of the presidential election and then the COVID business that's ramped up, you can get down on yourself. But right now, a lot of stuff happening in city headquarters as we finished today up with the member meeting, and which was a great meeting. Dan didn't belabor topics too much, which I think is the lack of drinking beers at the local.
That's true. We did finish in record time, and then we opened it up to the citizens, and all hell broke loose,
which it usually does. But Nate, we have another good show this week for these folks. We have less volume of topics to cover, but some real depth. We start out talking about the future. The Futures program started this week, so we'll give an update on where we're at with the new part of the club. Since it kicked off this past weekend. And then we will run the theme of new members to the Crow coaching staff as we welcome newly crowned Minneapolis City 2's head coach, Michael Prunty. So let's just get started, man.
Yeah, for sure. So, John, you have been spending a ton of time at the Futures trial. Last week, we broke it down.
So tired.
Last week, we broke it down and kind of talked about the trials coming that are coming up. And that whole process. You gave us kind of a rundown of the ins and outs of it, and we talked about, back in the day when we were talking to Jeremiah Johnson about his idea for what could be the Futures, and now it's real, man. It's here. It's happening.
It's a thing.
And the kids are out there, and the kids are good. Can tell us a little bit about how it's been going? Especially starting, what did it start last Saturday with the first trial session?
Correct. So for sure, man, to start it off, we have to give credit where credit's due. Big shout out to the back office staff who helped us pull off a pretty seamless check-in process. Sarah, Dan, and then Minneapolis City Forever intern and Stegman's president, Daniel Warner, did a fantastic...
the world's oldest intern.
Yeah, exactly. They did a fantastic job of the check-in process, which is a super hard part of the experience that a lot of people don't realize. Then, we've gone through how many trials in the past 6 years? It's been a lot. I know dealing with it firsthand, but that they were dealt with things like a pandemic. We're now dealing with younger players. And with that, you have something I like to call the parent layer. Is on that.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. You have safety forms you have to fill out, trial waivers. I mean, you name it, man. So well done, folks. Round of applause to them for getting everyone checked in safely and ready to play. But on to the details. We had two groups of trialists, an A and a B session on Saturday. And then the A trialists came back this past Monday, and then the B trialists were last night. About 40 players each session.
Wow.
The things were split up into two groups because of the fact that we needed ample time, because we're playing indoors now. We needed ample time
Yeah.
to get the first group out and organize the equipment, sterilize what we needed to sterilize, break out different coaches in different areas, so you weren't maybe necessarily evaluating the same thing.
So many logistics you never would have thought of last year either.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And since it's an extensive trial process, you really gotta, and it's the first opportunity we're doing this with this category of player. So you got to pull it off, man. You got to whole ass it. You can't half ass it. So we really had to, to cross all the T's and dot the I's from not only the check-in process I mentioned, but also from getting prepared for. So when these players got in there, it was organized. We put out, socially distanced cones for each player to go to with their equipment to get ready. So the players were separated, making sure everyone's got their masks on, and a whole bunch of stuff that, we never would have thought about unless we were in a pandemic. So another hats off to our coaching staff.
It feels like we've been talking about the trial process beginning for a long time. What happened finally when the balls were rolled out?
Well, I mean, first off, in a trial process, it can be a total mind melt for a player. You're tossed into the mix with players you likely don't even know. You probably never played with them. They have different playing styles. They come from different backgrounds. And then all of a sudden, at the turn of a key or at the jump, it's like, go perform, because you need to make the team. And not to mention, now we're dealing with 16 to 19-year-olds who many of them have never been part of a process at this level of intensity or professionalism that we expect. As far as the activities go and they're concerned, we kept it pretty light in the first day, last Saturday, in the first two sessions, to kind of just get players eased into the trial process with us. So after a brief chit chat from Futures Mastermind and head coach Jeremiah Johnson, we got the players in through warmups and then into some more of the technical type drills that we wanted to run them through, that were less impact, less intensity, and then we split the field players up with the goalkeepers so they could be properly evaluated. With Allie was running the session for the goalkeepers, so that's kind of how it worked out. And then we ended the latter half of the session with 7v7, which is going to be the second half of the supplementary model that the Futures program is going to be. So I wanted to see what players looked like when they had time on the ball to make some decisions, but then all of a sudden we ratcheted things up to 100 and we're like, now go play a fast-paced 7v7 game. So
you said something like, 80 players showed up total? Like, what was their makeup? Like, how many, where are they from? Kind of what was their style, and kind of what were your impressions of what must have been a very diverse, varied group?
Yeah, I mean, the player makeup was an awesome mix. I'll be honest, when you go into this, you never know what you're going to get. We did, because we did go through a recruitment period. But even then, the recruitment period was handcuffed by the fact that we weren't allowed to go watch high school games unless you were a coach and you're playing against a player that we liked.
Sure.
So it was very much up to, referrals from clubs and club directors and coaches that we have relationships with, as well as players off the street. Players that Max Kent's brother is trying out. So we have,
cool.
We have some legacy, our first ever opportunity to maybe have a legacy player join the Futures program. So you got guys from the suburbs, from the inner city, and all the way in between. And for me, that was really fantastic, because we got a chance to not only see different playing styles from these kids, but with the focus of the program being to elevate the level of play in the state of Minnesota, it really was a chance for a lot of these guys to step outside of their unique little soccer bubble, with whatever it may be, whatever the markup of their unique soccer bubble is, and see how the other half plays. And by doing this, you can really tell the players that are able to elevate and adapt to that, which is what we're looking for. But mostly you get to see how great it is that we've essentially created the baby brotherhood of these young guys.
That is awesome. So, I mean, you get past day one, right? How did what did day two look like? And were there any setbacks after that first session?
Session 2 looked quite a bit different as we played, we played them, out for, we talked about how we kind of separate them out for 2 groups on different days for obvious reasons. We can't have 80 players in one indoor space. Group A got the luxury of not having to deal with the 5 inches of snow that fell last night. So session B was, it kind of caused some problems. You got to roll with the punches because a number of players missed it because of the weather. We also found out that there was a club experience where some of these players were coming from in between the Saturday session and our Tuesday session that required some players to take some 14-day quarantines because of COVID exposures.
So that was a club issue, not a Minneapolis City issue.
Yeah, it was coming from externally. So, we did our due diligence and made the right call of making sure that those players didn't skip their the quarantine process because they were so excited about the futures opportunity. So we had to have some players that we had to communicate not coming, or players that came to us and said, "Hey, I have to take some time off because I was exposed." So it shows a little bit of maturity for a high school kid to say, like, I'm making the right decision here. So yeah, we had a lot of different things thrown at us, man.
Did those guys are those guys going to get a makeup session, or they're evaluated just on that one session?
Well, we're also fighting with the fact that club soccer is starting, and then a lot of these guys do play high school hockey. You have that thrown into the mix too. So we don't have a lot of opportunities for these guys to close the gap on the guys that did turn up or that are COVID free or COVID safe, I guess you could say. So we're trying to figure out ways to get around that. One of the implementations that we have is from a fitness test perspective, which we ran the guys through in the second day of the sessions, or the second session of the trial process, sending them videos of what they need to do, and then allowing them the opportunity to send a video back of them doing it with their times. So that's one opportunity that we've provided players. Another opportunity would be any of our other trial processes that we have out there. We're going to have to continue to think of alternative ways, maybe looking at having them send us game film so we can watch some full 80-minute high school games or 90-minute club games of these guys and try to evaluate them at that point. But we'll give everyone a fair shake because of the weird time we're living in. We have to be not only understanding but adapt. So nothing as of like a concrete, if you missed session 2 and 4, you can come on this date and then that's your makeup. We haven't quite gotten to that point yet.
Okay. What did you put these guys through at every session? Like, how are you evaluating kids who, like you said, came from tons of different backgrounds?
We talked about, day 1 was kind of technical and then ratcheting things up into a game atmosphere right away. But the second session was our chance to see these players run through a litany of fitness tests. And they were both with and without a ball, and they were all timed activities. And I think that helped us kind of it helps you get a different look at these players that may have shown out in the technical piece or the game settings, but perhaps fall down a bit from a being in shape perspective. And what you also see then is, some of the players, namely, I would say the top half of the players that have come out, the ones that elevate once again in a different opportunity. So the guys that maybe are great technical players, they showed out in the sevens, but then all of a sudden they go into fitness tests and they're the ones that are finishing first, and they have the cleanest touches in the agility drills. So you're really able to see that complete player. Yes, there were, some guys that had to take a break to visit old Uncle Ralph in the bathroom, which I think was very eye-opening for them, because it wasn't that we were beating these guys into submission. It was more so that, like, you're going to have to go through some pretty serious fitness tests, because that's the level of program you're trying to get into. This isn't your high school program where it's like, go run the mile and then how many times can you juggle?
I I have never heard visit Uncle Ralph.
First time for everything, Nate. But it showed that these guys that we mean business, and obviously we weren't. We have a full training staff, so we weren't. I'll do the disclaimer. We weren't making guys jump into something that they couldn't do after they maybe have gotten sick because they were a little out of shape or they ate too close to training. So we did our part on that end. But it was it was a chance for these guys to see that this isn't your everyday club experience. This is something totally different.
I want to kick it back to something that you mentioned earlier about the makeup of the trialists, because the kind of diversity that you must have got, 80 players from all over the metro, means that there are going to be kids coming from all sorts of soccer systems, right? Mm-hmm. And that means so many different playing styles and strengths of these players to call on, and that, whether it's possession-based, direct play, even these unpolished kids, right? And that also means that if you're recruiting or developing for a system, like I'm sure you are, you're going to start to pick for the system, which I feel like that might be unfair to do at this stage. Mm-hmm. How are you maintaining like the diversity of play that you must have been getting in the tryouts? And is Futures going to be an environment where, you're a kid from Stillwater and his, build from the back style might mesh or has the opportunity to mesh really well with, kids that are used to more of a free flowing attack or reliance of on the ball skill, things like that.
I think you kind of answered your question.
I did.
So basically, if we go back to the makeup, you're going to see a lot of kids that are from more of a free form soccer culture. A lot of the ethnic, the kids that came from more of an ethnic background they hit that nail completely on the head. Very good individually on the ball. When you open and very good in tight spaces, but when you open things up, maybe that their development piece that we need to help them with is what to do in larger spaces with different players running off the ball and seeing the runs before they're made, kind of thing. Sure. But then you do have your kids that come from more of the traditional club background where their emphasis is more on that build out of the back, move off the ball, tactically build an offense as a unit, defend as a unit, where some of the kids, defense is a 4-letter word for them. They never heard it before. But in all honesty, it was so great to see that when we did get them into playing opportunities and out of the individual skills stuff and fitness, to see how it all kind of fit together. And we ended up having the opportunity to get through, because we had less players at the session last night because of the weather. Sure. and everything that I mentioned. We were able to go 11s, and it was something that we hadn't necessarily fit into the makeup of the trial at this stage yet. But we were able to see some of these kids and how they work in a full 11 aside. As far as the program itself goes, I think 100% we're looking for the top players. And if that means that we have, 40 center midfielders, that's what it means, because they're the best players in the program. But we also have to think about it from a perspective of, we also need to have defenders and goalkeepers. So we're looking at the position groups and taking the strongest players that will not only thrive in the 7v7 environment, but also when we do get into the exhibition phase of this, that we can actually put together a team, right? Like that's kind of the ultimate goal. But with it being a supplemental model, I'm okay with looking at the player pool and the rankings and saying, we have these 4 players. They're of very high quality, but they might play the same position, and we'll let them fight it out in the training environment, in the 7v7 environment, for who would then be the top at the position or the top half of the position group to then be selected if and when we do go full 11s.
It's interesting too, because you're going to get kids that, these are kids. There's a difference, right? So I can see how it's hard to expect a 16, 17-year-old, maybe 18-year-old to be able to switch seamlessly from, here's my system at MTA, here's my system at Minneapolis City, or here's my system at Blackhawks, here's my system at St. Paul Central, here's my system at Minneapolis City. Like, all could be very different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to evaluate them outside of the Minneapolis. I would think you would have to evaluate them outside of the Minneapolis City John Bisworm system first, and then develop them over the years to grow into what we want them to be potentially.
Right. I mean, you're 100% correct. I mean, but ultimately for me, when I personally, when I go into the evaluation period, I'm really looking for a few things. I'm looking for, technical ability, number one, like, can they pass, trap, and shoot, right? Like, that's like number one, no matter where you play on the field. Then I'm looking at the communication level that they have, because that's hard for a kid in this age range. Like, a lot of them aren't the communicator or aren't the connector that you would see them be at 21, 22, 23. And they are growing. And I think that as a coaching staff, we have to be very mindful of that. And I found myself falling into the trap a little bit, being like, when I'm evaluating a kid, saying like, he has a good foundation. However, he has too many things that we would need to give him to be to thrive in the environment. Whereas another kid I look at and I was like a little raw. However, given the opportunity to be taught, will absolutely elevate and could be a potential player for us for the future. So it is a delicate dance, but you have to, again, be mindful of the fact, like, again, they're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. So it's like, I found myself when I was watching the 11s, like, oh my God, that kid totally missed his winger, like his winger checking back into space, doing his job, and then immediately checking back towards goal. And like, all he had to do was put the ball into space, and that's a goal scoring opportunity, like totally missing that. And then I'm like, wait a second, John, this is the second time they've played together. This is a kid. These two kids are of totally different markup playing styles. The kid held onto the ball because he didn't want to make a mistake, because now we're in a trial atmosphere. We're not in training. The team hasn't been selected. Like I had so many fits of emotion about one simple play. I was like, okay, stop, relax, calm down. But I think the ultimate thing is that, actually, I'll stop there because I'm going to get into it in a little bit.
All right, man. So now the trials are over. You're in the process of choosing these teams, right? And I'm sure you and the other coaches are comparing your worksheets and stuff like that. What's next?
Well, man, you got me all worked up there. I gotta compose myself. This is obviously our first year of the program, and things could have gone one of two different ways. It could have gone the way of Minneapolis City PLA in 2016, where there was some chances to get some real big names in the local scene and just kind of figure out what happens. Not know what to expect. Try to just put them all together and hope it works. Or we could have seen that we, unfortunately, because it is a new program, that we're getting a second tier of players that we would have ideally maybe not selected if we were to get the people that we really wanted. And that's because of the fact that nothing on the players, but it's because of the maturity of the program. And I think that's a real big thing for us as a club to be okay with, that it's the first year. And as long as we can follow through with all the check marks in the boxes that we wanted to complete, we may not have those, the one percenters. They may be the kids that are going to Minnesota United, which is a pro system, and be okay with that. But I don't think we came across that. So the trial so far could have gone in one of those two directions. I really do feel, Nate, and I'm not just saying this, that it's been a fantastic start. And yes, there are players that might be more of a project, but they have that foundation to grow that I talked about. There are some players that haven't even come in yet that I personally have seen play, or some of our coaches have seen play, and on paper would put them into the program without sight unseen, basically. But it is a trial process, and with COVID, we have to just adapt to it. So there's also some of those guys that are out there, but ultimately there are players that are in this trial process that can absolutely play, and I get really excited watching them. And I think that they're the guys that one day could be on the first or second team in the club, and maybe a few of them could get elevated in the first year to be, squad players or training players in the first or second team. I've seen that level of talent already. But I know I know that, what's eased the anxiety of some of the staff and the front office folks in the club is that we have, in a weird year, I've been able to identify at least a third, if not more, players that can use this program to elevate themselves and also elevate soccer in Minnesota, which is why we started the project. So I think this is really going to be a benefit for Minnesota soccer to grow. And I'm really excited to get to the final phases here and then ultimately selecting the team and get them started.
That reminds me, how many kids are going to end up in the program at the end? 40?
I believe it was around 40. Now you're starting to get into JJ questions that I don't really.
Oh, okay.
I don't really remember, to be honest with you. I know that, we wanted to get 68-ish players out for trials to make it all work. And we got we had about 80. I have the paperwork right next to me. I think we have 91 players who signed up for the program to go through the trial process. And out of those 91, we need to select at least 44 to successfully pull off the program. So
wow,
we have it. It's there. And would I be comfortable with the players that we've seen so far to start year one of this program? Absolutely. Would I also welcome better players if they're out there? Absolutely. That's the point, right? So have the top talent. But I'm not saying that to discredit what I've seen, because I have seen the quality. But yeah, man, it's all there.
Very exciting, man. Hey, this is manager career mode. This is the best part about it, the youth scouting.
In the new FIFA. Speaking of FIFA, I have been waiting for you for, what is it now, almost a month of the game being out, to recognize one particular thing that it took you till today to mention to me. And what is that?
Yeah, Luke Hawkinson is in the game.
He's in the game.
How crazy is that? Our guy.
I'm the first Minneapolis City player alumni, or second, because Brandon buys in it. How many MPSL clubs can say they have two guys in FIFA?
No kidding.
Not many. But I actually purchased Luke Hawkinson in my career mode that I started this weekend.
I just bought him tonight too. He's not very good. He's not very good in the game.
Yeah, sorry, Luke. Your numbers.
Sorry,
suck.
dude. Your potential is quite low, but playing a very bad team. So
yeah, exactly. And I also may or may not have purchased Brandon By, and his numbers are a little higher. He's been in the league a little longer. But yeah, super awesome to have another Crow flying in the FIFA match.
I agree. How cool is that?
Super cool.
Our next guest is new to the pod and new to the club. One of 8 new coaching hires. Michael Prunty will be taking over as the head coach of Minneapolis City 2, leading our UPSL team to glory across the Midwest. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So as you know, we've kind of touched on a little bit. John and I have been around, and this club has come a long way since the days of needing like 2 coaches and a bizworm, right? So, as this organization has expanded, we've really found ourselves kind of growing beyond the familiar circles of people that have come up in the club, and which kind of leads us to all of a sudden we've got 8 people that that have a lot of fans have never seen before or heard about. So talk a little bit about yourself and your soccer journey. Like, where did you grow up? How did you come to love and then eventually to coach soccer?
So I'm originally from the state of Iowa, from actually a small town just outside of Des Moines, so the town of Adel, Iowa. And I jokingly say that I'm as stereotypical Iowan as you get, as far as like I grew up in the country. I was in 4-H. I had animals. It didn't really mesh with like soccer. I was lucky enough though to be close enough to a metropolitan area. Soccer is a thing, and And that was my interaction with the game. My parents had no concept. It was, something I stumbled into, got into the right team, and really loved it. My family's is teachers and coaches. So that's something that we all did. Most of them played college football and wrestled, and again, traditional Iowa sports, but I veered off the path slightly and pursued soccer. So really just took me through right out of college. I played college at Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa. I spent most of it up in Minnesota playing all the schools in the non-conference. So I'm pretty familiar with Minnesota from that perspective. But yeah, I just spent my time there, went into teaching straight out of school. So I was physical education. Kind of couldn't let go of soccer. So that brought me back into the Des Moines area and coaching club soccer, high school soccer. Actually moved to Colorado to coach club soccer and work. And then all of a sudden, this idea of college soccer pulled me back to Iowa, and I went down the college route. So I've been a men's college coach for 6 years, was a head coach at a school in Missouri. Life takes you all over the place. Came back to Iowa. And then from Iowa, I was working in the club world. I was also a head women's soccer coach at a Division III school in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, called Co College. And then this past year, my wife got a great job opportunity at the VA here in Minneapolis. And so I resigned that role and we moved to Minnesota. So we became official Minnesotans in May. So it's been quite my resume is just growing in length. I don't know if it grows in quality, but a lot of stops along the way, that's for sure.
So how did your paths eventually cross with Minneapolis City?
I'm a big fan of Twitter. I just think it's a good outlet, but just followed along and just saw what was going on, and had a couple friends through the Des Moines Wonders, who is a club in Des Moines who had played Minneapolis City's U23s in some exhibitions. And then I actually got to know Jeremy Handler as well, who was on the staff prior. So when he heard that I was coming to the area, he's like, "You got to reach guys." He said, "You'd be a great fit. They're doing really great things. You'd love it." So it was hard to argue with Jeremy. So I reached out to Adam, and that was kind of my introduction to the club.
So there's not a lot of, I just want to go back real quickly with something that you said. Not a lot of folks really think about Iowa as a soccer hotbed. No disrespect to Iowa. Many friends and soccer players I play with from Iowa, but can you talk a little bit about I feel like there is depth at the college level in Iowa that maybe some people don't really know about.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't think it's that drastic. I mean, our population's obviously much smaller than Minnesota, but it's very similar in the sense that we really only have one Division I program in the state of Iowa at Drake University. So there's not a lot of options from a perceived like scholarship high level. And so what that does is a lot of the best players playing in the state and playing at some of the really good private liberal arts schools, and creates a really good level at the Division III level. So, and I think the next piece of that is we also attract a lot of student athletes from out of state, mainly because of the small private school model doesn't exist in the West Coast as much. So, I personally in my college days played with guys from Colorado, Idaho, California, Brazil, Germany, all sorts of different individuals. So kind of a shock to be in as they always thought they were coming to a bunch of cornfields, but the scene in Iowa is pretty strong. It's just a smaller base. I would say like the quality of coaching is really high. But yeah, it's a different, you just know everyone. That's all I can say is from a soccer perspective. You either played against him, coached with him, or, he had some effect with him. So
you can't hide, right?
No, everyone knows who you are. So.
So you talked a lot about your upbringing in the game, and the multiple teams you've coached in all over the country. What's your coaching philosophy, and how will that and your strengths translate into coaching at this level with this level of players?
I think if I had like something that's kind of like the undercurrent for everything I do, it's I hope to lead the game in a better place. And as I've been around the country, is interacting with different players and different experiences, is I really think that in a lot of environments players are sold short. I think that they're not given the depth and that cultural experience that they get elsewhere. And so really trying to share the game with them in a way that when they leave the game, they're able to be good stewards of the game. And what I mean by that is coach them in a way that develops a deep understanding of the game that then they can teach it to their kids. I always joke with all my players that like one day you're going to be working, even if it's just with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, your kids, you're going to be a coach in some fashion. And so have we given you the tools to impart good soccer knowledge to those players? I get it's an opinion on what I believe to be good soccer knowledge, but my philosophy really is, we need to function on a global perspective as far as how we teach the game, not an American perspective, not what works in American high school or American college, but we need to impart knowledge from a global perspective. And so it's really just understanding that the game is more about space and control and less about athleticism, perhaps sometimes, which can be used in the United States. But I'm just really teaching them like it's, athleticism helps, but there's so many different ways you can play the game, and understanding that if you have the mental capacity to control space, that you can really dominate the game at all levels.
Work smarter, not harder.
There you go.
Wow. So even though our program, I would say Minneapolis City as a whole is definitely here to help develop talent, arguably I think your team, Minneapolis City 2, is the linchpin of that, because your team is the one that's going to be leaned on by college coaches, by high school coaches, all to develop their players throughout the summer. How are you going to juggle their needs, the needs of those coaches, with the needs of our team and our program?
Yeah, it presents some fun challenges, that's for sure. And I think, the big thing for me is being able to form relationships with each of the players to understand what are their goals and what are their needs from their personal development, but still understanding that, we're here to develop them as individuals, but we want to win trophies.
Sure.
And that is a delicate balance. And I think, most coaches that are working with that age group, that's, we all want to win, and that's part of it. But are we doing it in a way that's also helping these players, develop to the first team? Because that's really, outside of winning, UPSL trophies, that's really our purpose, is to push kids on and get them into the first team. So, I think it starts with me forming relationships. I got lucky to have an assistant, Kevin, who probably knows the player pool much better than I do, being in Minnesota. So how quickly we can get to know each other and get to know the players and kind of get a feel for what they're looking for out of the experience, and then trying to mesh what we're trying to do from a team perspective.
You talked about it briefly. I'm hoping you can maybe dive into a little bit more. I mean, you're taking over an established team with lots of talent that was selected under really a previous regime, and then ultimately halted by COVID this past summer, and didn't get a chance to feature in the UPSL. I know there was a lot of high anticipation across the UPSL platform across the country of us entering into the league as a new team, and rebranding the team into going away from the U23 moniker and a whole bunch of stuff. But you're kind of been given something that's already got the wheels in motion. What's your first order of business now with the team?
I think trying to evaluate what's there, what strengths lie within the team, and then starting to share my vision of the game and how that can mesh with their strengths. I think that's the biggest challenge is, there's a little bit of convincing that needs to be done from a coach's side. Anytime you take over a new team, you're a bit of a salesman, as far as like, these are my ideas on the game. And obviously, working with, Matt and the first team and what we want to produce from a larger perspective, but selling them on the ideas that we have on the game from a club-wide perspective. And then still being able to use them to highlight their strengths. I say really, we want to make the best players as often as possible in the game. And that, how do we go about that? Obviously it depends on the qualities of the players.
The nice part is that the team that you're inheriting is not short on really interesting personalities and quality. So I think you're going to find a really good group of guys once you really sink your teeth in, like club guys that like are just like us, and they think about the game like us, and they're just excited to be in Minneapolis City's ecosystem as much as we are as coaches and front office staff.
Good.
So you've coached all over the place. You've played soccer all over the place. What do you see are the benefits or the advantages of UPSL that the UPSL can provide for players at the age and skill level that you'll be coaching them? And what are some of the bigger challenges that it's going to pose?
I think, if I even all, like most coaches, we go back on our playing experience, but you go back to a time when I was a player, and in Des Moines we had a very successful PDL team, which is USL2, that won the national championship in Des Moines Menace. But really, if you weren't, they didn't pick many local kids, and the local kids didn't last very long. And then if you didn't make that, there really wasn't an option. There wasn't an option to further develop. So you're doing it on your own, or playing in Latino leagues, or various other environments that you did what you could. And I think that's one of the biggest benefit of this UPSL model is, or this MC2, is that you're still on a developmental path. We're still working you towards a goal, but you're still getting competitive games, and you're fighting for and you're getting what we believe to be good coaching that's going to help you along that path. Versus in my case, we were making it up as we went. Some of the stories I have from the Latino leagues in the Des Moines area, I think you could write a book on, as far as what I saw, the things I experienced. And so I think those were valuable, but I think we're able to give them a much more organized, high level, or as you guys say, professionally amateur experience that is going to keep them going on that path, versus it being random, and kind of leaving it up to chance.
Sure. And how about challenges?
I think that, the biggest challenge, is the short-term season. How do you impart good knowledge in a playing style to players when you're managing teams, not a lot of training sessions, where you're, to be honest, you're either preparing or you're recovering, which is very similar to their experiences at the college level. So it's not new to them, but we still want to be able to impart our ideas on them in that tighter window. So, those are going to be some of the challenges, and then obviously me personally getting to know them as quickly as possible so that we can do good work from the start.
Is there a coach that you had in your past that you draw from, or left a kind of a lasting impact on you?
Yeah, my college coach, the only reason I got better is because we played with better players. But I'd really say a Brazilian gentleman, and who was very different to what soccer was at the time. His favorite saying was, let the ball do the work, and we build out from the back. And, this is the 90s in Iowa, where, most of the coaches had a British accent. So, we played in a very different way. And I would say just even then just has completely kind of like changed my frame on what I viewed the game was, and how we go about it. We still want to have a little bit of flair and fun and be able to express ourselves, but still do it in an efficient way, as always.
So, we're currently now 2 full sessions into the futures trial process. I know that isn't your ship to lead in the club, but you're definitely much so part of it. Nate and I dove a little bit deeper before we had you on kind of my thoughts about what's happened so far in the sessions. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think it's going, and what you maybe saw from the experience and the players overall so far.
Yeah, I think the thing I enjoyed the most is how close the guys have gotten to each other in a short period of time, as far as some of the camaraderie and the support for each other, and some of the work that we're doing. Just the other night, we're doing timed events, and some of the relationships that are building. I think there's definitely quality there. And how I almost look at it is there's quality with a lot of you really molded and shaped that could turn out very well for the club in the future. I think that's the exciting thing. Youth, you just see all the potential that they have and what you can do with it. And, we're lucky if we have the opportunity to help shape that, is a big part of it. But no, I'm impressed with some of the work rate, some of the stuff that the boys have done. Given any type of trial experience can be stressful. It's tough sometimes to be at your best when you're not surrounded by your mates or your typical environment. So yeah, I've been impressed by their mentality and the work of a lot of them.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point, and it could just be like the Minnesota niceness, but you're 100% right. And I didn't even really pick up on it until you mentioned that it is kind of very unique on how well these guys have come together from like an interpersonal perspective in less than 5 hours of playing with each other.
Yeah.
Like I've never really come across that before.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like how I looked at working at different youth clubs, and we looked at it as we want to group people by shared levels of commitment. There might be varied levels of skill, But when we can get the same people that are interested in the same commitment level, you can really do great things. That's the same thing. Like, even though there's like various levels of abilities that have been coming out, they're obviously there for a reason. And they're committed to their growth as a player. So when you can get those type of individuals grouped together, the ability to push them forward becomes much easier.
Man, the brotherhood runs deep all the way to the youth level.
The baby brothers.
Yeah, the baby brothers.
Would you say that approach is common, or is that something that you have kind of developed personally, this idea that like really you look at commitment first to the process and then you can evaluate skill level after that?
I think it's rare. I got lucky to work under a club director in Iowa City that was his starting point, especially at the younger ages, and you could even say some of these boys that we've worked with at the trials, they're not the finished product. Some of them are still growing. Some of them are grown men. I think it's not fair to make broad assessments when they're not done yet. Now, obviously, we want to play a huge role in their development, and we have to project. That's just part of our roles as far as evaluating talent. You're trying to project, but if the mentality is shared, I mean, that has to be the starting point for great things. I mean, if everyone's on the same page, and then we'll do our best to help them develop to their maximum. But yeah, I thought it was rare, to be honest, at the youth level. And in this gentleman that I worked with, his name was John Cook, his goal was he wanted teams winning state cups at U18. He didn't care about some of the younger age groups because he was just more focused on getting the right group of committed players and then doing the work, growing players. So yeah, I think that's something that, we can do even with kids that are, 16, 19, I don't think it expires. I don't think that idea expires at a certain age.
I think it's funny. Earlier, John mentioned there were some kids that might not have been prepared for the level of activity they would have been put through. So they ended up running to the bathroom to visit Uncle Ralph, as he put it, which I thought was hilarious. But I mean, you'd prefer, on some level, you'd almost prefer the kid that is working his ass off to keep up, super committed, and goes, pukes, comes back, tries again. To the kid that knows he probably could make the team and doesn't really try.
Yeah, no, I think that it's an interesting balance because I think one coach even gave it to me this way was, you got to have the guys that can, play the piano, and you have to have the guys that can carry the piano. And if that balance gets off, your team's not going to do well. So it's funny, sometimes the piano players are not always the ones that are really putting themselves in that situation from a mentality standpoint. But there's plenty of them that are that way anyways, but I don't want to do any broad generalizations.
Yeah. I've definitely played against a lot teams full of piano carriers. I can tell you that.
And if you can be both, you're special.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Michael, it's time to play a game. We've had a lot of games on our show over the last 4 years. Are we almost at 5 years probably? But our newest game is one that we're calling Ask John Anything. So you can ask John 2 questions about anything, and this might be hard for a guy like you who might have just met John and doesn't really know him as well. But really, this is an open forum here. So it could be soccer related. It could be something like which one of his kids he thinks is gonna drop out of high school, who knows, right? If John answers both of them truthfully, which he will, the game is over. But if he pleads the fifth on any question, then he has to answer your next one. So the trick, I guess, is to trap him with the question you think is that he thinks is as bad as it gets, and then really have something super sinister in your back pocket.
The other way to look at it, though, is some people have come on and asked questions because they wanted to hear me tell a story or a different, unique perspective on something. So it doesn't have to be a stump scenario. I don't want you to go into that. But if you'd like to, I'm up for that challenge.
It could be about just pulling up a stool and listening to one of Uncle Biz's tall tales.
And I at least get 2, right?
Yeah, you get 2 for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have any stumpers. I think it'd just be more interested in your answers. I would say, I think my first question is, if you could replace the coaching staff with a musical band, who would you pick and why?
Oh, oh. Well, as Nate is fully aware from our unique road trips that we've taken together as part of the city experience, I'm a big fan of the band Fish, and I think that does translate well from a soccer perspective. Not only just like the playing style, which is very improvisational, but the fact that if you're talking about it from a coaching staff perspective, you need, and you were even saying it too, that shared atmosphere of being on the same page in order to move forward collectively. And I think that a lot of people kind of shit on music like that because of the fact that it's not your 3-minute hook and bar scenario. It's very much so, now it's your time to take over for 2-3 minutes and go get after it and be unique and be yourself. But you're going to have to come back in and then, play the background music while the guitar solo is happening, or the drum solo is happening, or the horn section comes in. And I think that does translate well to a soccer perspective, because on a coaching staff, there can never be too many people that offer different ideologies and thought processes, but you need to have that shared thing, that morsel that brings you all together, and you can be unique and different. And I look at our staff that we currently have, and I think it's very much so the makeup. We all get along, as you've seen, and you're now part of that. But we're all unique in our own right. But when it gets down to business, we're all doing it for the same reason.
That's good. No,
Great question. Awesome answer.
that was good. Yeah, I mean, that there has to be some structure there for the improvisation to actually work. So that was good.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I would say the last one is if you could offer one critique to the coaching staff of the first team based on your assessment. We'll call it now the 2019 season, because there was no 2020 season. What's your critique of the team to the coaching staff? Like, what would you change?
I think that my main critique is something that manifested towards the end of the season. I think within our club, and we've talked about it before on the show, we've come to an impasse where we're now 5 years into the process, and the horses that ran the race for us the first 4 years got us to a very fantastic point. However, as we've seen even at the youth level in the futures trials, there is hunger coming up on the heels of the veterans that got us to where we're at today. And I think that last year was a down year in our conference, and we were able to, I think, whether you like to hear it or not, if you're another team in our conference, I think we handily took the conference title again without the need to really push ourselves. And then we saw at the end of the season, with players getting more playing time, that fell on that youth level and really did carry us over, I think, some big humps to get us into the playoffs and win the title. Like Eli Goldman would be a good example. Aiden O'Driscoll, the 17-year-old that we had in Kevin Andrews. Those younger players not only pushed the older players in training, but they were given at some point throughout the year less of an opportunity, because we were just kind of rolling through the conference. But when we really needed them, we leaned on the youth. And I think that I would like to see that more. And I think we're moving towards that. But last season, I think, was that last kind of push up up Everest for us to realize that, we can still have the old haggard veteran. And I say that very tongue-in-cheek, because our veterans are like 26, 27, 28. But those veteran players that are pushing, that are carrying us, but we can influx the youth and allow them to have their opportunity to shine, and there's not going to be a drop-off. So I think we're getting there. But last year, I think maybe there were opportunities where we could have seen it earlier, but we were just winning, so we didn't need to.
Sure, Alex Ferguson, we need to know when to turn the team over.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally. You nailed
it. Cool. Well,
this guy knows you too well already.
Sorry, I didn't have any stumpers, but I thought
No, those
That's
were
okay.
questions.
Those are good questions. That's why the segment isn't called Stump John. It's called Ask John Anything.
Yep.
Cool.
How the interviewee has become the interviewer. Yes.
Yeah. The student has become the teacher, I believe, is what I texted to Allie after her show last week.
The new coaches are treating you much better than the old coaches.
And the players. The players have been ruthless.
Well, Michael, thank you so much, man, for joining us. It's great getting to know you, and we look forward to seeing you on the sidelines and the team on the field in a safe 2021. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
For sure. Yeah.
that,
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
That is all for this week's show, folks. Thank you, as always, to our show sponsors, Summit Brewing Company. Friends, listen here. If you have not tried it yet, the Dark Infusion Coffee Milk Stout is so good. I'm drinking one right now, and I'm not really a stout guy. So, hear it from the horse's mouth. Fantastic. Fantastic.
At least not yet.
Yeah, at least not yet. I'm not going to actually try to tell you what makes up this stellar sipper. So just do yourself a favor. Head on down to your local liquor store today and pick up the party pack, which is the only way you can get it. And you will not be disappointed. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. Hey, if giving back to the community means a lot to you, maybe it's time to give the club that gives back. It's tax season's right around the corner, whether we want to believe it or not. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game, as well as our newly formed Futures Program Scholarship Fund, where you can donate and get a kid into trials, which we're currently in right now. Consider a tax-deductible donation to a truly city-focused organization. Do you have anything you want us to cover? You have not told us that in quite some time. So any guests you want us to have on, any quests you want us to undertake, send us mail. It is super easy to do. You can hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch or through email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All questions, comments, and concerns are welcome. And finally, complain to the club on Twitter at MPLS City SC. Also, remember to head on over to twitch.tv/MPLS City SC and subscribe and join my guy, Nate Morales, every 2 weeks to get your FIFA foot fix as Nate comes to you and takes you through all things Ultimate Team related in that world with City players Max Stewart and Jonah Garcia. So definitely head on over to twitch.tv/MPLS City SC and subscribe, get the notifications when new shows are happening. It's been awesome. I've actually even considered jumping into the FUT world, but I'm using my better judgment in order to not embarrass myself. So that is all for this week, folks. I am John. That was Michael. And of course, that was Nate. And until next week, you got hoofed.
Poster burning maple weeds, cradle major keys. Thinking back, I've been major since the minor league. So supreme, too much sauce off my olive NMDs. I could staple steez, bend the goat so I get the cheese. Never fall, rake them leaves and make sure every moment gets seized. And everything I see is make